but it is the position that the date that a decision notice issues is the date of the decision notice, not when a decision is taken to approve. So if we receive additional information and it is material to consideration of the application, we must consider it. In this case, because it raised new information, we felt that should come back before members for consideration. Don't know if that answers your question.
It answers my question, but it's just the element of when do we stop? You know, when do we stop the process? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but there's nothing in our legislation that prevents the submission of further information. And it comes back to whether or not it is material to making a decision. And in this case, we considered that the two matters raised were material. So we can't issue a decision unless we've given due consideration to that. Given that the application had been before members for decision, it wasn't open to officers necessarily to take that decision. One members had already given consideration to the application, so we brought it back before yourselves.
Thank you, Rosie. Content, Councillor Gallagher?
I'm content, you know, on this occasion, but I do think that we're opening up a Pandora's box that we could create revolving door applications, you know.
Okay, thank you. Eamon Lynch, are you online? Can you hear us? Eamon? Eamon, I think you're on mute. Hi, Eamon, can you hear us? Hi, Eamon Lynch, can you hear us? Members, we seem to be having difficulty getting Mr. Lynch online. Are members happy enough to go on to Councillor Declan Norris and the agent Andy Tate and then try and get Eamon on afterwards? Is that okay? Thank you. Hey, Declan, you speak first and then we'll have the agent Andy afterwards.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me on. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the applicant. As you know, I'm the rural councillor for the Faughan area, and I don't normally come into committees like this, but in this application, I think it's right to speak. Just going on some of the things that have been said already, like to me, I was shocked that this was being brought back in today. The decision was made last month, and I understand that there's times that new information comes in. But to me, there was a big time lapse, and that it was the 6th of May, it was the 14th of May, I believe, the new information came in. And normally the green certificate would be handed out a bit sooner than that time span. But in that respect, with the 2 new pieces of information that was put on, a lot of you know I'm health and safety trained, NEBOSH certificate and all the rest, and I've stood up at this site, and I would totally agree with the applicant's health and safety officer, and I would actually argue that the new health and safety report that they even entered the site, you know, they write it, but I can't really say. But to me, looking at this is a young couple that's trying to put a site, that's trying to stay in the rural area. And this is something, as a rural councillor, we try to develop and keep our local youth as they build their families. And this is a whole infrastructure of the rural area. To me, standing on this site, to me, this is the only site that it can go. And to me, looking at it, it is a cluster. You're standing on the Sally Woolley Road. You have a house opposite you. You have a house across the way on the Ballyarton Road. Eamon Lynch's house is up the road a bit. And the one thing about the objector in this, I actually, if I thought it was really affecting the objector, I think it would be more sympathetic, but it has really no impact on him. He doesn't see it. He doesn't feel it. I can't understand the whole objection to the site. So on that fact, what I say is this is a cluster. This really is a young couple who is expecting their first child, and that leads to more families staying in the rural area, schools staying within the rural area. This is what rural area is all about. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Norris. And I'm conscious that members can't ask you questions, so you can sit there or take your seat again. Thank you. So, Andy, 5 minutes.
Chair, members, thank you for allowing me to address the committee once again. Firstly, I fully appreciate that officers have a legal duty to place any material information received before the decision notice is issued before members. I therefore understand why this application has returned to committee today. However, the question before members is not whether additional information or additional documents have been submitted. The question is whether those documents genuinely change the plan and balance that led this committee to approve the application in your meeting in May. When members previously considered this application, you heard from both the objector and myself before reaching your decision. Following debate, members concluded that greater weight should be attached to the applicant's health and safety evidence and determined that the proposal was not contrary to policy. On that basis, the committee resolved to approve the application. I would respectfully submit that nothing presented since that meeting changes the facts upon which that decision was made. The objector's health and safety report is simply an alternative professional opinion. It was prepared without inspecting the working farm, without observing the day-to-day movement of machinery, livestock or farm operations, and without first-hand knowledge of how this farm functions. It does not introduce any new factual evidence. It simply reaches a different conclusion from the report that members previously considered. Indeed, the officer's report itself acknowledges that the health and safety concerns associated with the domestic access through the existing farmyard. The disagreement is simply whether another solution could exist elsewhere on the holding. That remains a matter of plan and judgment, and members perfectly entitled to reach a different conclusion from the officers. The court judgment submitted by the objector does not alter the plan and balance. Officers themselves conclude that matters raised regarding hedgerows and biodiversity have already been adequately considered within this application. Therefore, it introduces no new planning issues that was already capable of being considered. This application has now been under consideration for over 2 years. Throughout that period, every interested party had the opportunity to submit reports, technical evidence and representations. These additional documents were only submitted after the committee had already debated the application and resolved to approve it. I would also ask members to consider that this is not a case involving loss of privacy, loss of daylight, overlooking, noise or any adverse impact on the objector's home. The proposed dwelling does not adversely affect the objector's residential amenity. Therefore, I don't see how this affects the objector in any way. I'd also remind members that every statutory consultee have all confirmed that the proposal is acceptable within their respective areas of expertise. I'd also like to address alternative sites suggested by officers. The report that the dwelling could instead be located closer to the farm buildings using a new access from Sallow Valley Road. However, that alternative site would still require the same visible displays and therefore the same removal of roadside hedge to satisfy DFI roads. The difference is that it would also require approximately 150 metres of additional laneway across agricultural land before reaching the proposed dwelling. With respect, I struggle to see how that represents a demonstrable landscape benefit. It would involve the same roadside access, the same hedge removal, and significantly more engineered development extending into the countryside. Policy requires demonstrable landscape, access, or amenity benefits. Simply suggesting another location does not in itself demonstrate that this is a better planning solution. Ultimately, the planning application for you today is the very same application that members approved in May. The farm remains genuine and active. The operational health and safety concerns remain. The new submissions do not introduce new facts about the farm or the proposal. They simply express a different opinion after the committee had already exercised its planning judgment. Members previously concluded that greater weight should be afforded to the applicant's health and safety evidence and that the proposal is not contrary to policy. I respectfully submit that nothing before you today provides any compelling planning reason to depart from that carefully considered decision. Finally, members, behind the policy references, reports and technical arguments is a young family simply seeking the opportunity to build their future within their own rural community. The applicant's daughter and her husband have already had to move away from this area while this application has been under consideration for more than 2 years. They have put their lives on hold waiting for this decision on a home that was intended to allow them to remain close to their family and the farm. The LDP Free Policy, LDP 32, recognises the importance of supporting rural families and sustaining rural communities for the future generations. I therefore respectfully ask members, having carefully considered and approved this application previously, to bring this matter to a positive conclusion today and allow the family to move forward and building their life together in a new home and re-establishing the future within the community they call home. I therefore ask members to reaffirm that decision you reached previously and grant planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Are there any questions from members in the chamber or online for Andy? No? Okay, Andy, you can return to your seat. Any questions from members online or in the chamber? Apologies, Keith Kerrigan has come in. Andy, could you take your seat again? Sorry.
Apologies, Chair. I didn't get typed in quick enough.
No, you're fine, Alderman. Go ahead.
Chair, just with a question to Mr. Tate in regards to the information which he has provided, and I have read through the pack as it was when it was before the committee, and again detailed in through the pack presently, and the information online and additional information. The refusal reasons, we're still sitting with 6 refusal reasons, Andy, and I'm just wondering your thoughts saying on the change in that in regards to the clustering of the existing group on the farm buildings in relation to that. And you did touch at a question in regards to the health and safety report, but you've stated, did I pick it up there? You stated that the report which had been sought by the applicant was one where I see the pictures online in regards to that was one that viewed the site and visited the site online. But did you state that the second report doesn't appear to have been on site, or your information from the applicant that the second health and safety report was not on site itself? So just a point of clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No, the objector's health and safety consultant hasn't been to the site or the yard. he actually doesn't have permission to do so, so he would have had to go through my client to get permission. And as of yet, no, there has been no site visit, so it's a difference of opinion, professional opinion, to be honest, but I don't see how you could prepare an accurate report without seeing the operations of the yard.
Thank you.
You content, Alderman Kerrigan?
That's okay, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Tate? Go ahead and take your seat again. Thank you. We'll now try and get Mr. Lynch again online. Eamon, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me, Chair?
Can indeed, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm on the mobile. I had a technical problem there. My apologies. Okay. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity, and good afternoon, members. Following the committee meeting in May, I was concerned about the weight that was attached to the health and safety report, particularly given the deficiencies of the report that I expressed at that meeting, but of which there was no further exploration at the meeting. In view of this, I commissioned an independent report. This has been carried out by a health and safety professional, and I think it's important for the committee members to hear the conclusions of this new report, as they are not fully set out in the case officer's report. The concluding summary briefly reads: the proposed dwelling is located approximately 150 metres from the existing farm grouping. The report is entirely silent on the justification for the separation distance and provides no evidence to demonstrate why the dwelling cannot be accommodated closer to the farm complex. This omission is particularly important given that Housing 18 requires a health and safety report to justify the siting of an off-farm dwelling in relation to the farm enterprise and associated activities. The report does not fulfil this requirement. Accordingly, little or no weight can be attached to the submitted health and safety report, i.e. the applicant's. Whilst it identifies potential hazards, it fails to demonstrate that the risks can be satisfactorily mitigated, fails to assess the alternative sites identified by the planning authority, and fails to justify the proposed location of the dwelling some 150 metres from the farm grouping as required by policy Housing 18. The report should therefore be accorded limited weight in the determination of this planning application. That is new evidence. End of quote. It's important that committee notes that this report was submitted by me to planning on the 1st of June, over 5 weeks ago. Since then, the applicants had ample opportunity to challenge its findings, but there has been no professional health and safety response to my consultant's report. I think the head of planning also wrote to the applicant on or around the 19th of June, advising them that they can submit any further evidence to address any of the new issues raised, but nothing has been submitted. The summary conclusions that I have just read out is expert, unchallenged evidence, and in my view now is the relevant health and safety evidence when determining this application. Any challenge to the conclusions as part of this committee meeting would be new information, which I would need an opportunity to comment upon. Secondly, you will see in the case officer report a short section that advises you that if you're minded to approve the application, then further details would be required through submission of a design and access statement. The statement is only required if you are minded to approve, and the issue does not arise if the officer's recommendation to refuse is accepted. Again, I think this is something that your officers may need to advise you on specifically, should you decide to approve the application. I had raised in my previous comments at the May meeting that even if the site could meet the exception to the cluster policy test, it would still have to integrate into the landscape. The sites identified by your officers differ much more than the application site than simply the removal of a roadside hedge. As I live beside the sites, I can say that visually they are fundamentally different. The application is a roadside site and is prominent in views from the surrounding roads. The sites identified by your officers are set close to the farm building, to the farm group, are over 100 metres from the road, and they tuck in behind rising ground. Overall, this combination would mean that any dwelling on these sites would be hardly visible from the road. I understand that the applicant may not wish to pursue these, but they are entirely acceptable in planning terms. Again, as I said previously at the May meeting, there are a number of options that would meet the local needs identified. There is absolutely no question of not getting a site on this farm, but it does require a consideration of alternative sites, including the sites helpfully identified by your planning officers. And in summary, given the further unchallenged evidence that I have submitted, I believe that there is sufficient evidence now before the committee that would allow a change of opinion. And on that basis, I would ask committee to support their officer's recommendation. If I have a bit more time, I just wanted to address that point about the report that I've submitted, that I think what the agent said there, I think there's a failure to understand the nature of a health and safety report. A health and safety report is essentially a risk assessment. It identifies hazards, number one. Number two, it identifies mitigation measures to mitigate the hazards. And thirdly, it then determines an overall level of risk. That is a methodological assessment. And that's what my consultant has focused on, a risk assessment and the methodology that's required for that. It does not require my consultant to visit the farm to critique the health and safety report. Sorry,
Mr. Lynch, but your time is now up.
Thank you. That's it. That's it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Eamon. Will you just sit with us for a minute, see if there's any questions for you?
Yeah, thank you.
Members, any questions for Mr. Lynch? Anyone online? Go ahead, Councillor Gallagher.
I just regarding the report, and I would I agree that that report is subjective, it's opinionated. And we've heard earlier on from someone else who may be experienced in doing reports that there's potential the person who drew up this report wasn't even on site, didn't do full days working of what was on the site. So this report could be very subjective.
No, I just said that it's not a requirement for my consultant to be on site and to have. He's read all the submitted evidence, of which there's a lot of that about the farm operations, obviously. But I return to the point that it is a professional report, and it remains unchallenged evidence, and that is the important point to bear in mind. It is a critique of a professional report that has been submitted by the applicant. And there was an opportunity to come back and comment upon it by their professional health and safety officer, and that has not happened.
Thank you, Eamon.
Okay.
Any other questions for Eamon in the chamber, online? I don't see anyone.
Chair.
Sorry, Keith, go ahead.
All right, Chair. No, Chair, I just wanted to afford Mr. Lynch an opportunity to wrap up. I know his time was cut slightly short, so if there was any other pressing points which he wanted to just finish off on, Chair, before his time was cut off, or if he was content that he had concluded with a statement, I just would have queried just if he had anything else he wished to raise at this stage, because I know his time was cut short. Just that would be my only query. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Eamon, are you happy enough?
I have nothing further. I had everything said in the statement. I had time.
Okay, thank you very much for your attendance. Are there any questions for Rosie before we move on to a vote? Councillor Jackson.
Well, maybe not the Rosie, the Philip. Like, it's been clear that, and I suppose this is highly unusual, where committee takes a decision and there's information submitted after that. I do have a query, and I'm concerned if this becomes a trend. But if there's a question, it's in relation to how the application has been resubmitted.
Is there a requirement for us to submit our DSS everything again? Or is because like I was working on the assumption that we would be coming here just to assess the new information and the validity of the new information. You know, the report that was presented is almost it ignores the decision the council has already taken, and it's presented as fresh. So is there just a question in relation to that? Is that a legal requirement, or is it something that we've any control over? Because I suppose it would be much more quicker and it would focus people's minds if we came on here simply to assess the new information that was submitted and nothing else.
Chair, through you, that it's a fair point and it's an interesting point. The fact of the matter is that either approach, the council doesn't have a policy on that matter. So far as I'm aware, this hasn't happened in our time since planning powers were transferred to the council, where we've had to refer one back because of material new information. Unfortunately, it's the legislative position, as you know, that we do have to do that. The report as it is before you today has been presented on the basis that this is a full rehearing of all issues. The rationale for that and the advantage of that is that then one doesn't have to confine the decision making to those members that were present and in attendance at the previous committee meeting, and particularly in a scenario where there's been a recent, it wouldn't apply in this case, but as you know, not all members were present on the previous occasion. You could have a situation where it changed over mandates, for example, and things like that. But it certainly, you know, if the council wanted to make it the position that no, it would only consider new information, then we could do that, and it would be on the basis of an addendum report, but then it would be in relation only open to those members that were previously present to look at the matter. As officers, we took the decision that it was better to bring it forward as a full representation, even though no doubt it's fresh in members' minds and so on. Most members would have been in attendance, but that was the thinking at the time, and it's how we find ourselves in this application. We can look at it in the future if members prefer.
Content, Councillor Jackson.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to check. So when an application comes in, it's applied under a particular policy. Is that the only policy that will be applied to that application, or will you look at others? So if an application comes in for a farm and a dwelling, do you look at clustering? Do you look at gap sites? Do you look at other, whether it would, other policies would be applicable to that application or not when you're assessing it?
Generally, an application is made for, in this case, just made for a dwelling in the countryside. So, but the information that supported the application made it clear that it was an application for a dwelling on a farm. There have been circumstances where there was no specific guidance from agents and officers were in a position to look at the application and see did it fit any of the planning policies that applied in the rural area, and then make an assessment on that basis and perhaps ask for further information if we were required to. But this is considered as a dwelling on a farm, and was the supporting information was in respect of that particular proposal. I know it has been raised by that the dwelling might also cluster with two other dwellings, but we haven't given consideration to that clustering policy. And in any event, I don't think it would meet that policy in terms of there requiring to be a focal point, and that it would round off on three other sides. I don't know if that answers your question or maybe gone too far.
It does. So no other consideration has been given, and that is the norm. Okay.
If there are no other questions for Rosie, we'll move on. There's a
Sorry, Chair. I'm very slow at the typing. My apologies. But a wee question for Rosie.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. Apologies for that. Just highlighting Rosie, and I know you've answered a couple of parts there to what I was thinking. in regards to the comment that Mr. Lynch made, and it's in the pack there in regards to this additional report that would need to be cited, if we are minded to overturn the decision, and just querying in regards to that, is that something that has to be put in now at this stage, or is that something, you know, I'm minding the time frame in regards to that report as to what would be done in relation to that? Just a time frame in that, is that, you know, is that effectively falls under like a condition to get that done? Or I understand this is an outline plan, but it's just to get a wee bit of clarity in my own head for it. Thank you very much, Chair.
I think, Councillor Kerrigan, that is in respect of the refusal reason where we're stating design and access statement, in respect of the design and access statement. Is that correct?
That's correct. Sorry, Rosie, I couldn't just get the right term.
Yeah, there is a refusal reason on that basis. So if members were minded to overturn the decision, that refusal reason will need to be addressed. You know, as you go through each and rebut each of the refusal reasons. Design and access statements are required at outline stage, not at reserved matter stage. That's set out in the legislation. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Rosie. I just querying, was that was on in the previous refusal?
Yes, I can confirm it was, yes.
It was. Aye, sorry. Yeah, I'm just checking as I'm looking on a couple of different screens here. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you, Alderman. Any further questions? Online? Chamber? Okay, so there's a recommendation to refuse. Put it to you members now. Thank you.
Chair, can I just ask one further question, just in clarification from what Alderman Kerrigan's asked? What point is the access statement and which of the refusal reasons is it referred to?
Sorry, through the chair, it's specifically in respect of refusal reason 5, where design in the area of outstanding natural beauty as the siting of the proposal is not sympathetic to the special character of the AONB. So specifically, we would require the design and access statement to provide more detail on how the dwelling would be more sympathetic, how you've arrived at your siting, what scale of dwelling then will sit neatly into the landscape. So because we didn't have that, it is an outline application without any of that design detail, but that should be more set out in the design and access statement. And in this case, that detail wasn't provided.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Is that something then we can request at this stage or not?
Yeah, no, I mean, we can request that now. The reason that we didn't request any further information from the applicant was because as an officer team, we were recommending refusal.
Just before I take you in, Councillor Gallagher, Philip wants to clarify something.
Yeah, just to explain the rationale behind that, if we believe that there are other refusal reasons that wouldn't be overcome as a result of something like that, then, you know, we wouldn't necessarily request that document at that stage. If we had one refusal reason on this and we didn't believe there was a fundamental policy issue in relation to this elsewhere, then we would frequently go back and ask, could you provide that documentation at that stage? If members are of the view that other refusal reasons can be overcome and they are content that they can be overcome and that would be the last outstanding issue, then it's certainly open to members to request that the matter be deferred to allow that to be received. Obviously, there would be no point in putting an applicant to that time and expense of producing a design and access statement if it was only going to box off one of 6 reasons for refusal. So we need to be content that the other 5 can be addressed.
Councillor Gallagher.
Just to follow up Karen's point, is there a possibility that this is outlined, you know, and we're talking about the key principle here of planning? How could that be conditioned reserved matters?
Yes, Councillor Gallagher through the chair. It's the design and access statements. There's a legislative requirement that they are submitted at outline stage so that officers are given an indication of what the thinking behind the particular site and how a dwelling would integrate on that site, not at reserved matter stage. That's the way the legislation is set out.
Alderman Kerrigan, are you looking to come in?
Aye, thank you very much, Chair. I suppose it's just following on from the previous, apologies, I have a man, Hubwell Lawnmower. The following on from the previous comments there in regards to the design and access statement, just querying, can it be proposed in there, the application be proposed in regards to the points subject to a suitable design and access statement coming in, or is it the case that we would have to defer? I'm just minded the magnitude of this that has been placed on the design and access statement, which has been placed on this occasion, where it doesn't appear to have been placed at the May meeting, and just wondering if there is a thought to try and propose to come to an alternative view than the planning officers have recommended. You know, if it can't come in under reserved matters, as Rosie has stated, you know, what the appropriate options for us now, you know, can we go back, or can it be a subject of a proposal being made and that being then subject to the design and access statement coming in, that effectively no planning permission would be granted until a design and access statement came in and was reviewed, because as stated as outlined anyway. So just a point of clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I would be loath to introduce a condition by the back door, if you like, and say that we were effectively making it subject to something that we can't lawfully condition. However, if members are of the view amongst themselves that really that's the only outstanding issue, the correct approach would be to defer the matter, bring it back, and it would be then presented again in front of the committee in due course.
Thank you, Philip. Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Can I just bring Rosie in for a bit of clarification as well here, please? Thank you.
Members, just to bring back to your attention another aspect of the further information that was submitted by Mr. Lynch. It was in respect of the hedge removal and the requirement for an ecology survey. So if members can factor in that if you're minded to overturn the officer recommendation, that that is also a piece of information that would be required.
Further question, was there any information submitted, like way the application of how this would impact on an area of outstanding natural beauty? Was there any?
Through the chair, yeah, no, it was, we didn't consider that the information submitted was sufficient, that it sufficiently met the requirements of being a design and access statement.
Councillor Kerrigan, you're looking, or Alderman Kerrigan, you're looking to come back in?
Sorry, Chair, for coming back in and out. I was just on that last point there in regards to the ecology statement. Would that be needed overall, full stop, or is that needed at certain times of the year, as in regards to now this time of the year in regards to the birds nesting and then the hedgerows being cut at a latter time? Because I thought I noted in the report that their DFI didn't have an issue. I know it's totally different departments between the Ecology Department and DFI, but in regards to stepping the hedgerow back for sightlines and that, but just clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Through the, go ahead. Yes, through the chair. Yeah, Councillor Kerrigan, the hedge has to be completely removed, and there's over 100 metres of hedge. I think it's 105 metres of hedgerow that needs to come out. So the purpose of getting the ecology statement is to understand what the ecological, what habitat it provides and what species potentially protected and priority species it supports. So it's hard to answer your question without that report. It may require seasonal consideration. We don't know if there's any badgers impacted. Whilst we've stated in the report that it could be removed outside the bird breeding season, birds aren't the only species that could potentially be affected.
Thank you, Rosie. And just one follow-up, and thank you, Chair, and for indulgence. Does that have to happen with every hedgerow removal that we have before the Plan Committee?
In general, yes, we are getting those ecology reports submitted. There's a biodiversity checklist that must be completed. And if you answer yes to particular questions within that, it points to the requirement for an ecology statement. And NED are requiring that the ecology statements are completed by appropriately qualified ecologists.
So, councillors and aldermen, we have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Devine, go ahead.
Chair, on the basis that when we discussed this at the last planning committee meeting, the refusal reasons were argued against, and we approved that. So on that basis, I'm suggesting that we look for the design and access statement to be completed and the ecology report, because we've already argued against some of those points, and that then would obviously, if those need to be done at outline stage, then maybe we should do that. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine, Councillor Devine. Can we have a seconder for the proposal? Councillor Jackson. Are all members agreed? Okay, we go to a vote. Andrew, can you take a vote, please?
Thank you. This is the vote for item number 3, LA 11 2024-09310. Alderman Keith Kerrigan,
For Andre.
Alderman Neary McMorris,
For.
Alderman Janice Montgomery, Councillor John Boyle,
Apologies for it. Yep.
Councillor Caroline Devine, Councillor Paul Gallagher, Councillor Conor Heaney,
No.
Councillor Christopher Jackson,
Uh,
Councillor Fergal Leonard, Councillor Patricia Logue. Okay, Councillor McGowan, Councillor Patrick Murphy, Councillor Martin Riley,
For.
and Councillor Lillian Sinai Barr.
For.
So that's carried to defer the application to allow submission of further information. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute comfort break. I'm conscious it's very warm and okay, so we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. We've had a request to change the running order. And with your agreement, I would ask that we move on to LA 11 2026 0117F. Everyone okay?
You're the chair.
Thank you. So LA 11 2026 0117F, the removal of an 11.7 metre high pole and its replacement with a new 18 metre high pole for telecoms at the footpath approximately 10 metres south of 27 Rock Road, Derry. And Kieran's going to present.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is item 7, LA 11 2026 0117, and the developments for the removal of an 11.7 metre high pole and its replacement with a new 18 metre high pole for telecoms. And this is on lands to the south of 27 Rock Road with a recommendation to approve, sorry. This is just the site outline in red along the Rock Road. And the next slide then, this shows the existing mast on the site in terms of the size and scale in relation to the trees in the backdrop. And then in the next slide then, we just have pictures again of the existing mast when you view it along the Rock Road. The new mast proposed will be set on behind us and around the same area. And again, this is just views in travelling up the Rock Road again. You can see the existing mast on the left-hand side. In terms of this application, it seeks to remove an existing telecoms mast located along the Rock Road adjacent to McGee University and replace it with a new 18 metre mast, which will be set further back from the public road to the rear of the existing mast. The site is directly adjacent to the public road with views of the proposal's location available when you travel in both directions as shown in the pictures. Existing mature trees and vegetation provide a backdrop from some views for the proposal, which is within the McGee Conservation Area and adjacent to listed buildings. As part of the application process, there are 4 consultees, all who had no objection to the proposal, with some providing conditions and informatives, and the consultees were Environmental Health, DFI Roads, Historic Environment Division and City of Derry Airport. Just in terms of the site itself, then this is just a layout. I don't know if you can see the cursor here, but the new mast is set back from the footpath in this area here with some new equipment, and some of the old equipment will be retained. And then again, the existing mast on the site is located in this area here along the footpath further forward. And then this image here is basically showing us the old mast, which will be removed, and then the new mast then, which will be erected further back in the site off the footpath. In terms of the application, there have been 17 objections received from 15 individuals, with issues covered within the report, and there have been 3 late objections received within the last couple of days since the report has been done. I'll go over just and cover some of the issues raised within the late objections just for members. In terms of late objections, it raises concerns with the visual impact dominance of the proposal due to its height and location and impact on the conservation area. In terms of these issues, officers have assessed this and are content with the proposal and its acceptable location as being proposed, with advice from consultees including Historic Environment Division listed buildings section. The proposal itself is a slimline mast and located away from any dwellings in the area, which will ensure there's no negative impact upon amenity. Within the agent's supporting statement, they advise that a mast of this size is required for 5G to remove clutter from buildings and development in the area, which would affect 5G coverage, which is the latest technology available. It wouldn't have previously affected the 4G coverage of the old mast. And then the objections then question if infrastructure sharing, upgrading existing infrastructure have been considered, or a less visually harmful location has been considered. Again, officers are content with the proposal and its location. The proposal is a mast upgrade for the provider EE, who have advised within their supporting statement that the new mast must be located behind the existing mast due to the presence of underground utilities at the site. In terms of then the principle of this type of development has already been found acceptable with the previously approved mast on the site. And again, this mast proposed is not a new mast in the area as such. It's an upgrade to an additional upgrade to the existing mast in the area, and it's not an additional piece of infrastructure for an existing provider or mass sharing wouldn't be an issue here, as again, this is an upgrade as opposed to a completely new piece of equipment. Concerns then in relation to the impacts on wildlife have been raised, and this has been assessed as part of the application. The proposal does not seek to remove trees or hedging to facilitate the mast. As part of the application, there's a biodiversity checklist which was submitted, which indicated no trees or vegetation would have to be removed to facilitate the development. The applicant has highlighted a small amount of hedging were required to be cut back to facilitate the development. However, this wouldn't amount to the removal of vegetation or cause any significant harm. And again, officers are content with the proposal in this respect. Concerns were then raised with the cumulative impact and undesirable precedent for future infrastructure in the area. Officers have looked at this, and any further mast proposed within the area will be assessed on its own merits under the relevant policies. In this case, the existing mast on site will be removed when the proposed mast is erected on the site. And again, as already highlighted, this is an upgrade to the existing mast, which again has been placed behind the existing mast just to ground conditions and restrictions there on the site. And it's not considered technically a new proposal in the area, given that it's an upgrade. In terms of policy considerations then, the relevant policies for this application are contained within the Derry City and Strabane District Council Local Development Plan 2032 plan strategy, with the main policies being GDPOL 1 and 2, which are general development management policies and design and settlements, UT3, which relates to telecoms connectivity, including broadband, policy HE4, which relates to the listed buildings and their settings, policy HE5, which relates to conservation areas, and then policies NE1, NE2, and NE3, which relate to the natural environment. And in the Derry Area Plan 2007, the maps apply in relation to this application. So, as already covered, the proposals located within the central area boundary adjacent to the telecom mast, which it proposes to replace, and the main policy to consider in relation to telecoms is policy UT3. UT3 states that planning permission will be granted for a new or upgrading of existing telecoms apparatus if it enhances connectivity. It doesn't detract from the character of the area. The applicants must show that they have considered and mitigated potential landscape or visual and amenity impacts. It is accommodated through mast sharing, or where this is not feasible, a new mast offers an improved solution. It doesn't impact upon the operation of the airport, and the proposal should comply with the 1998 International Commission on Non-Ionising Radiation Protection. As already covered, this mast proposed seeks to replace the existing mast on site, which the applicant has set out as an upgrade to the existing mast as opposed to a completely new installation. They've advised that the mast proposed has to be located behind the existing mast due to the location of underground utilities, and the increase in height is also required to accommodate new transmission technologies such as 5G, as these are more susceptible to obstructions such as buildings, which the old 4G technology would not have been susceptible to on the existing mast to be replaced. And overall, having considered the information provided, officers are content that the proposal will comply with policy UT3. In terms of the visual impact, the mast is within the conservation area and adjacent to a number of listed buildings. Therefore, policies HE4 and HE5 of the LDP apply, and these relate to listed buildings and their setting and development within the conservation area. HED, Historic Buildings Unit, have been consulted in relation to the proposal and are content will not have a detrimental impact upon the setting of the list of buildings in the area due to the pole being set back on the site and the colour proposed to help mitigate and integrate the pole. As part of the consultation process, HED did carry out a site inspection to assess the proposal, and they are content that it complies with policy HE4 of the LDP. In relation to the conservation area designation and the impact of the development, officers are also content that the relocation of the mast away from a public footpath and on the green area in association with the colours proposed respects the views within the conservation area and lessens any potential impacts from the development. In relation to this, the proposal will respect the character of the adjacent buildings by way of its scale. It will not result in problems such as noise. The siting will protect views within the conservation area. There will be no loss of landscape features, and the proposal won't impact upon the public realm, which complies with the requirements of policy HE5. The applicant has sited and designed the mast to ensure there is minimal visual impact from the views within the conservation area and Rock Road, which will minimise then the impacts upon the listed buildings within the vicinity, and therefore the proposal is covered. Complies with policies HE4 and HE5 of the LDP. In terms of natural environment, then the development to be considered against policies NE1, NE2 and NE3, which relate to natural environment, and again then considered against the relevant policies in GDPOL 1. Again, officers are content that the development will not result in any adverse impact on natural heritage interest. The proposal requires minimal vegetation removal limited to the cutting back of a small amount of hedge along a rock road, which is minor in nature and requires no removal of trees or hedging to accommodate the development. Objections to the proposal have sought a bat survey. However, the applicant has submitted the biodiversity checklist as part of the application with none of the criteria assessed triggering the requirements for a bat survey, as works do not affect the trees, buildings or watercourses, which ordinarily give rise to the need for an ecological assessment of this type. Given the limited scale of vegetation removal being taken in terms of the cutting back of 4 metres of hedging, the trees around the site will remain untouched. The proposal then complies with policies NE1, NE2 and NE3 and the relevant criteria of GDPol 1. In terms of impacts on residential amenity, the proposal has been assessed in relation to its impacts and the relevant criteria in GDPol 1 with advice from the Council's Environmental Health Department. Officers are content that the proposal will not give rise to an unacceptable impact upon residential amenity in the area. The monopole doesn't give rise to noise, odour or vibration. The only noise emitted will be from a cooling fan associated with the equipment cabinets, which will only operate on days when the temperature is high, and it won't be audible. It will not be audible from any more than a few metres away. Therefore, EHD have no concerns in relation to the proposal. The mast proposed, as already highlighted, replaces the existing mast on the site and is approximately 6.3 metres taller. However, officers are content that due to its location away from dwellings, it will cause no loss of light, obstruct primary views or cause overshadowing or general immediate issues due to its location and narrow profile. As the site already accommodates the telecoms equipment, this proposal would not be introducing a new form of development incongruous with the surroundings, with the principle of this type of development deemed acceptable through the approval of a current mast on the site. Overall, having considered the relevant policies, officers are content the development wouldn't cause any significant impact upon residential amenity and complies with the relevant criteria of GDPol 1. And in summary, having considered the policy and consultation responses, approval will be recommended with the conditions set out in the report before members.
Thank you very much, Kieran, for your comprehensive report. We have 3 objectors who wish to speak. We have Stephen Doherty, Paul Stewart and John Gormley. Can you please come down? Thank you both very much. You have 5 minutes between you.
Thank you for hearing our representation today on behalf of residents and objectors. Your decision today is not if telecommunications infrastructure is needed. It is about this proposal at this height and this location and whether it is appropriate. We understand we must improve connectivity, but it should be done in a respectful way and away from residential areas. The mast will be 12 metres from my garden wall and approximately 17 metres from my front door, living room and bedroom windows. It will be 20 metres from my neighbour Paul Stewart and 25 from Mr. and Mrs. Gormley. At 18 metres tall, it will rise 6 metres above the tree line and dominate our outlook. Who would want a similar overbearing structure so close to their homes? I would like to point out that there is an error in the planning report. In paragraph 1110, there is a statement that other sites were considered but not taken forward. This is incorrect, as the applicant clearly states that no alternative sites were realistically considered. Although the applicant claims this must be located here, other sites are available yet weren't considered. The applicant did not carry out a sequential search, which is ordinarily required. These are large corporations with significant resources who could easily locate the infrastructure in a more suitable location. This is not a like-for-like replacement. It is a major intensification, replacing an 11.7 metre mast with an 18 metre mast, a 50% increase in height in a conservation area between 3 listed buildings and near residences. An additional 6 metres is a lot in a residential and conservation area. The planning officer should not rely on historic approvals, including one from 1999, which predates the conservation area, to justify a much larger modern and industrial structure. Historic Environment Division confirmed in their report that the proposal will impact on the setting of Claremont Presbyterian Church, a protected vista, and that harm could not be entirely avoided. What degree of harm is acceptable, and what is the purpose of conservation areas if avoidable harm is permitted? The Council has a statutory responsibility to protect conservation areas, and in their report, Historic Environment Division defers this decision to the Council. They did not pass judgment on the harm to the conservation area itself. The McGee Design Guide clearly states new structures must blend with the older historical properties. The proposed mast won't. The McGee Conservation Area benefits the university as well as the city and all its inhabitants. The university confirmed in writing on May 20th that they do not intend to enter into a consensual agreement to host the mast. Is it acceptable to place an 18-metre mast on the university's lawn, towering above neighbouring trees and buildings, when the university itself does not intend to consent? Many valid objections were raised by concerned individuals, yet they've all been dismissed. Photo montages were not requested from the applicant. My own photo montage, which clearly shows the impact of the mast, was dismissed. Even if you look at the side elevations that have been presented here today, it's evident that the new mast will sit well above the tree line, not within it. Ofcom coverage data shows there is no gap. Definitive evidence of 5 native bat species was presented to a planning officer, but a full ecological survey was not requested. This is even though one was requested for another ongoing application at the same postcode. Assertions made by the applicant are accepted without challenge or evidence. For an example, an incorrect distance was only corrected after my persistence. The planning officer declined to come and see the impact the mast would have from our front gardens. Our local political representatives understand our concerns. We met with Grace Unilis, our mayor, who submitted an objection. We met with Mark Durkin, who submitted an objection. We met with Sean Harkin, who has objected and even offered to represent us today. Darren Guy understands our concerns and has objected, and Shauna Cusack has also objected. If we had been able to meet with you, I'm sure you would object too. You are our last line of defence. If approval is granted, we have no right of appeal, whereas the applicant can appeal or find a more suitable location. This would have been demonstrated had they been required to perform a sequential search. On behalf of residents and other objectors, I respectfully ask that you listen to our concerns and those of your fellow political representatives and reject the proposal. Thank you for your time.
I live about 25 metres away from what has been described as a replacement mast, but it's actually a new mast because it's on a different site, not far away from it, but it's on a different site. And when you look out from our front and you take a wee look at, by the way, the council very cleverly did not produce a montage, but I have seen this montage. And when you look out from our house and take a wee look at the difference that the new mast is going to make as opposed to the old one, it's just massive, massive difference. As pointed out by Stephen here, it's 50% higher. It actually moves up above, high above the tree line. And keep in mind, this is in a conservation area. Surely such a place was not suitable for this sort of thing. It's absolute monstrosity, and it's not in keeping with the Sorry?
1 more minute.
It's not in keeping with the local area at all. Your lovely trees and the gardens around McGee and so on and so forth. Stephen has got a montage, and if anybody would like to look at it, they should come and have a look at it and get a really good view of what this new mast will look like. Planning officer refused to come and take a wee look at the area. He probably knows the area, but it would have been very nice for him to have come and a wee look at it. Shows very, very little interest and totally unacceptable to the people who live about there. Our local representatives for that area all agree with our sentiments and point out once again that if the plan is accepted, we have no right of appeal. If the plan's refused, the applicant can appeal or go to another site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. John, can you just sit where you are? Do we see if anyone has questions for you? Members, is there anyone with questions for Stephen or John? Anyone online? Okay. Members, have anyone a questions for Kieran? Anyone online? Any questions for Kieran? Thank you. So members, we have a recommendation to approve this LA 11 2026 0117F. Are any members prepared to make a proposal? Sorry, Councillor Haney.
You, Chair. Well, I've listened carefully to the officer's report and to the case being made by the objectors, but in my view, this will have an impact on the conservation area. I can't see how it wouldn't. And also on the basis that there are many more appropriate sites in close locality to where this is being proposed. So I'm proposing that we do not accept the recommendation and refuse permission.
Thank you, Councillor Haney. Have we got a seconder? Councillor O'Reilly, thank you.
Thanks, Chair, for bringing me in. I'm happy to second the proposal that we refuse to accept the officer's recommendation. Chair, for me, it's the increase in size of this. This is a 50% jump in terms of the existing infrastructure compared to what's been applied for. So I do think that that does, in my opinion, on balance, I know that's the phrase that was used by the officer in the recommendation, that on balance, I thought it was not a significant change, but I think a 50% raise in the size of the mast would dominate in the area, the adjacent dwellings and other buildings. So happy to second the recommendation, or sorry, the proposal there from Councillor Haney. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrew, can we take a vote, please?
Yes, this is item 7, LA 11 2026 0117F, and the proposal is not to accept the officer recommendation. So Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
I have to abstain. I stepped out.
Thank you. Alderman Neera McMorris.
Abstain.
Alderman Dennis Montgomery, who's not here. Councillor John Boyle. Okay. Councillor Caroline Devine. Thank you. Councillor Paul Gallagher. Councillor Conor Heaney. Councillor Christopher Jackson. Councillor Fergal Leonard. Councillor Patricia Logue. Okay. Councillor McGowan. Councillor Patrick Murphy. Councillor Martin Riley. And Councillor Lillian Sinai Barr.
So the recommendation has been overturned, 8 for and none against. Okay, so we're moving on to our next application, and it's LA 11 2025 0434F. Yeah. Just before we come on to that one, Item 5, LA 11 2024 00900, the erection of 47 new residential units consisting of 29 number 2-bed, 10 number 3-bed, including 1 number complex needs, 8 number apartments, including 4 number complex needs, car parking, landscape, ancillary development with access arrangements from Hawthorne Way at land situated 150 metres to the west of Hawthorne Drive, fronting Springtown Road. I'm just conscious that a lot of the refusal reasons are based on DFA roads. We couldn't get a representative from DFA roads here today. And with members' agreement, I would propose that we defer this particular application until we get a representative from DF roads.
Yes.
Councillor Riley, go ahead.
Through you, Chair, just clarification, are we seeking to defer it until the additional meeting that we're having this month, or deferring it until what would effectively
No,
be
it would
September?
be September's meeting. Councillor Jackson.
Chair, I'm assuming, and it's a big assumption, but I'm assuming we requested a presence from DFA. Was there an explanation given why they wouldn't be in attendance? And can we get a commitment that they will be here in September?
There was a request for them. They had no one available on leave. Yeah.
So it's the holiday season.
Holiday
No,
season.
I appreciate it as holiday season, and Chair, I would agree with the suggestion from yourself, because like the roads issues are an integral part of this application, and we need the road experts to be in the room to discuss it and come to an informed position. So I think it's essential while we're discussing this application in particular, that DFA roads representatives are here to answer questions that the committee may have. So if we can press that, then I'm conscious it is the holiday, so we can cut them a wee bit of slack in this particular meeting, but I would insist in the strongest possible terms that there's representatives available for September.
Councillor Gallagher, please.
Chair, just I'm looking at the time and it's 5 o'clock. And I'm thinking we're going to be back tomorrow. Is there a possibility? No, I see the head shaking there. No, I'm just joking. You stop Gallagher, you said.
Okay, so there's broad agreement that we do that.
Second, Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, we have proposer and seconder. Thank you. Oh, moving on to the next application, it's LA 11 2025 0434F. And Rory is going to give the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the next item is application LA 11 2025 0434F. And this is an application for a proposed development of a new teaching and student centre associated with the University of Ulster, along with a bridge connection and alteration to existing buildings, an ancillary cafe, car park and landscaping, alterations to existing service road and associated site and access works. The application site is located within the Ulster University campus to the north of Clarence Avenue and to the east of Northern Road in Derry. And the recommendation today is for an approval. So as mentioned, the application site is located adjacent to the Northern Road, and the current slide here just shows its location in terms of an aerial photograph, and also its location outlined in red there within the wider university campus, which you can see outlined in blue on the attached slide. In terms of the zoning and the retained dairy area plan maps, the application site is located within the central area of the city on lands identified as civic and education precinct. The application site also falls within the McGee Conservation Area. And just some images here of the site looking from both the Northern Road end and from within the campus itself, showing the land in its current condition. And it's currently vacant with some informal car parking. And the images here, you can see the wall associated with the B-listed Gate Lodge building on the Northern Road. And this will be retained and is not affected by the proposals. Just in terms of the policy context, the application was assessed against the following: the Regional Development Strategy, the Strategic Plan and Policy Statement for Northern Ireland, and in terms of the policies within the Local Development Plan, of which the expansion of the university is seen as a key objective of the LDP, and assessed also in terms of the dairy area plan maps. And also against 2 draft SPGs, creating places and biodiversity in new developments. Consultation responses were received from a number of consultees as shown. All consultees have confirmed their content to proceed with the proposal and have no objections subject to conditions as outlined in the officer's report. In terms of representations, there was a total of 2 objections received. These objections have been addressed in detail within the officer's report. Following submission of additional information, the application was re-advertised and neighbours re-notified on the 13th of May 2026, and there's been no further representations received since then. The proposed teaching and student centre development can be read as one structure divided into 3 distinct blocks, as shown here. The scale and massing of each block has been designed to respond to its spatial context, with the largest block being the central pavilion, with both the northern block and the Clarence block being of a smaller scale to reduce the impact on public roads and neighbouring residences. Elements have been incorporated under the design in terms of scale and massing to complement the wider conservation area and the setting of a number of listed buildings nearby. An example of this is the design of the Clarence block, which has been stepped to reflect the form of the listed terrace buildings along Clarence Avenue. The layout itself, as mentioned, represents 3 interconnected blocks, and this is centred around a landscape courtyard. A first floor bridge link is proposed to connect the development to the existing campus building, and pedestrian links are included throughout the development to link to the wider campus. Just on this slide, there's some elevations shown here, demonstrating the design of the proposed structure. The use of red brick materials and pitched roof forms is used to reflect the architectural character of the surrounding historic buildings within the wider university campus and across the conservation area. Various elements have been incorporated into the design, such as the use of stair towers, which have been informed by skyline and silhouette of historic buildings within the wider McGee campus, and the aim is to replicate this within the modern context of this design. Just some 3D illustrations here, just showing how the proposal would look. And again, just a couple more images here, just showing how the development would sit within the existing McGee campus and adjacent to the surrounding built-up area. In terms of landscaping, as mentioned, the development is centred around a central landscape courtyard with additional planting proposed throughout the development. A tree protection plan has been submitted, which sets out measures to retain a number of existing mature trees within the site, and these will be retained and protected throughout. The proposal and summaries a planned application for a new teaching and student centre associated within the McGee campus at University of Ulster. The proposal is for an expansion of the university, which accords with the objectives of the LDP. All consultees are content, subject to conditions outlined within the officer's report. This includes Historic Environment Division, who were content with the proposal and content that it would not have any adverse impacts on the setting of nearby listed buildings and would help preserve the character and appearance of the McGee Conservation Area. Therefore, having considered all material considerations, policies, and outlined within the officer's report, the recommendation is an approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rory. We have Sarah Barrett, Tom Stokes, and Daniel Clark in the gallery. Can I invite you down, please? So, Sarah, Tom, and Daniel, you have 5 minutes between you. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. With me is Tom Stokes from TSA Planning and Daniel Clark from Ulster University, and we're all available to answer any questions. Firstly, I would like to thank the planning officers and consultees for their engagement and assistance throughout the processing of the application. We welcome the officer's recommendation for approval that is before members this afternoon. The proposed development will deliver a state-of-the-art teaching and student centre, providing new lecture theatres, teaching rooms, computer labs, student services and social learning spaces that are essential to support the continued growth of the university. This proposal represents much more than a new university building. It is a significant investment in the future of the university in the city and in the wider Northwest region. The development will strengthen Derry's position as the economic, educational and cultural capital of the Northwest. For decades, the expansion of higher education provision in the city has been a shared ambition across the council and across our wider community. This is an important step in turning that ambition into reality. The new teaching and student centre will help accommodate an additional 625 students and forms part of the Northern Ireland Executive's wider ambitions to expand the campus to 10,000 students, providing educational opportunity in the Northwest. This is an investment of approximately £30 million and is expected to support more than 160 construction jobs in the short term and helping underpin future economic growth in the longer term. Importantly, the benefits of this development extend well beyond the campus itself. Every additional student who chooses to live and study in Derry contributes to the local economy, supports local businesses, helps sustain jobs and adds to the vibrancy of the city centre. The proposal has been subject to extensive engagement and design review throughout the PAD and application process. There has been ongoing consultation with planning officers, Historic Environment Division, the Ministerial Advisory Group, DFA Roads, local residents, university staff and students. As a result, the scheme has evolved and been refined in response to the feedback received. Particular care has been taken to respect the amenity of neighbouring residents, especially those of Clarence Avenue, whilst also responding sensitively to the site's location within the McGee Conservation Area and its relationship to nearby listed buildings. The design also retains the site's important mature trees, which have been a key consideration throughout the design process. Members will have seen from the officer's report that the proposal has been thoroughly assessed by the relevant statutory consultees, all of whom are satisfied the development can proceed subject to conditions. This proposal is ultimately an investment in people, in education and in the future of the city. This investment will benefit not only the university but the city as a whole. It will create opportunity, support economic growth and help to ensure that more people can choose to study, work and build their future here in the Northwest. For all of those reasons, I respectfully ask that members would support the officer's recommendation and approve plan permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Are there any members have questions for Sarah, Tom or Daniel around the application? Councillor Jackson.
From a good chair, and I suppose it's a question for Daniel more than anything. But first of all, just welcome Sarah back to the chamber. But there's Daniel in relation to the and I suppose there may be questions for Sarah and Tom as well. But the first question is for the university. If approval was given to this today, what's the timeframes involved in relation to construction and having it operational and welcoming students on? And then, Chair, if in relation to, because Sarah mentioned involvement from the Ministerial Advisory Group, like we've seen in the past, how this council have benefited from advice from the Ministerial Advisory Group on key sites, and this is a key site. This is a key project, as has been outlined already. But it's clear to see that it's a sympathetic design that takes into consideration the wider conservation area. But I just wouldn't mind a wee bit more information around the involvement of the Ministerial Advisory Group. But I suppose so. Just those two questions: the time frame, and then the involvement, and what level of involvement the Ministerial Advisory Group had on the design. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
George, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Jackson. In relation to timeframes, we've already completed our procurement process, so we are in a position to appoint a contractor sort of September, October, in the anticipation of breaking ground. Ideally December, but it's always a tough month, so January 27, and it'll be a 2-year construction period. So we're optimistic then of welcoming students. The academic year will be 28-29 academic year is the current plan.
Through the chair, just to answer Councillor Jackson's question, we had instigated a design review with the Ministerial Advisory Group prior to submitting the planning application, and we held a meeting with them on the 27th of May 2025. Now, their discussions were mainly focused about accessibility, mobility, heritage, urban design and neighbourliness and sustainability of the buildings. Overall, the Ministerial Advisory Group and the panel supported Ulster University's ambition for the growth of the campus and also supported the design proposals that were further refined following the meeting and prior to submitting of the application.
Thank you both for your answers. Are there any more members in the chamber with any questions? Anyone online? I don't see anyone wanting to come in with questions. So would you take your seats again, please? Thank you very much. Any members with questions for Rory? Go ahead, Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I'm intending to make a proposal if you'll accept one.
Of course, yeah.
Chair, and it's been outlined, the expansion of the university is a key objective of this council and wider society, and it's been outlined by Sarah and I think Rory had mentioned it as well. We need, in terms of our economic prospects, we need the university to grow, and we need the university to be welcoming. And the proposal that's in front of us today has been designed sympathetically. It's, in my view, it's welcoming, and it's welcoming at a key gateway to the university estate. And if this is accompanied by other applications at the eastern side of the university, where we've as a council named University Square, it's a clear demonstration that the university is open, accessible to the citizens of this city and any students that wish to come here and locate here. I think this is a real positive step by the university. It's a statement of commitment ultimately grow the university and work with the city, though in terms of being sympathetic to the wider conservation area. I think I'm delighted to see it come here today. It's an exciting project, and I am more than content to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation to approve. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Have a
Happy to bring me in, Chair. Yeah. Happy to second the application that's before us and the recommendations that are here this afternoon. We've talked about expansion at our city's university for many occasions in this chamber. It's good to see tangible evidence of that here this afternoon. I know that part of the expansion of the university is to offer different courses, and we talked about the medical school in the past in this chamber, but we also, part of the mix of increasing the number of students is making sure that the students who want to come are coming to a site that is state of the art and able to give them the very best learning environment. So as Councillor Jackson has touched on in terms of the application, it fits well into the adjoining area and certainly does, from the recommendations as it outlines, deal with a range of different new opportunities to give students that top class experience here in our city. So very happy to second the Chair, and hopefully it will be ready for construction, can be completed as outlined by the presentation that we heard earlier there this afternoon. Thanks, Chair.
thank you. Is there anyone else would like to speak on this before we go to a vote?
Thank you, Chair, for that opportunity. Hi, look, like the previous speakers, this is about, and we've been, since I've been a councillor, 11, 12 years, looking about investment from the university. This is what a proof on the pudding, so very much welcomed. And I hope it progresses to seeing 10,000 students in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Andrew, can we go to a vote, please?
Okay, this is item 4, L11 2025-0434F, and the proposal is to accept the officer's recommendation to approve. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Or Andre.
Alderman Neri McMorris.
Or.
Janice Montgomery is not here. Councillor John Boyle is not here. Councillor Caroline Devine. Councillor Paul Gallagher. Councillor Conor Heaney. Councillor Christopher Jackson. Councillor Fergal Leonard. Councillor Patricia Logue.
She said, she sent me a message there, said she's voting yes, she's having difficulty with them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGowan. Councillor Patrick Murphy. Councillor Martin Riley. And Councillor Lillian Sinai Barr. Okay, thank you. That's unanimous.
Thank you, members. Our next application is LA11 2024-07000, and it's site for dwelling on lands adjacent to 10 metres northwest of number 15 McLean Road, Eglinton, Derry. And Kieran is going to present for us.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is item 11, LA11 2020, or sorry, item 6, LA11 2024-0700. This is an outline application for a site for dwelling on lands adjacent to 15 McLean Road, Eglinton, and the recommendation is to refuse. This here just as the site location itself outlined in red. Adjacent, this is number 15, outlined in blue. And then we have the overhead then just showing the site itself. And then this is views from south of McLean Road, and then from west on Donny Brewer Road. And then we have a picture then of the junction under the site. As covered, the application is seeking outline consent for a new dwelling adjacent to 15 McLean Road. Site itself, as you can see from the pictures, relatively flat, small agricultural field located at the junction of McLean Road and Donnybrewer Road in Campsie. And the boundaries along the main roads consist of a low post and wire fence, with the boundaries between 15 McLean Road and 101C Donnybrewer Road defined by mature vegetation. In terms of consultations as part of this application, there were 5 consultees, all of who had no objection, with some providing conditions and informatives. The consultees in relation to this application were environmental health, DFI roads, NIA, NI water and shared environmental services, and there have been no representations or letters of support received to the application. In terms of the main policies relevant to the application, these are contained within the Derry City and Strabane District Council Local Development Plan 2032 plan strategy, with the main policies considered in the report before members being GDPOL 1, General Development Management Policy, ODC 1, which relates to development in the countryside. And then we have a number of the housing policies which we've been asked to consider, which are Policy How 22, New Dwellings in a Cluster in the countryside. Policy How 23, New Dwellings in a Small Gap Site and Existing Built Up Frontage in the countryside, and Policy How 24, Personal Domestic Circumstances in the countryside. Then in relation to integration, design and rural character, Policy CY1 and CY2 were considered, and then TAM2 in relation to access, and policies NE1, NE2 and NE3 which relate to natural environment. And in the Derry Area Plan 2011, then the map supply in relation to this application. In terms of the policy, the proposal is located in the open countryside, with the first policy applicable being ODC 1, which sets out a range of development types which are in principle considered acceptable and will help sustain rural communities such as housing. And the proposal is also located within the green belt as identified in Map 1 of the Derry Area Plan 2007. In this case, the first policy that's been considered, Policy How 22, which relates to a new dwelling and an existing cluster in the countryside. This policy itself has 7 criteria which the development must meet, and officers have considered the development against those requirements and are content that the proposal in itself meets the requirements of criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 and 7, as the proposal forms part of a cluster which lays outside of a farm and consists of 4 or more buildings, of which at least 3 are dwellings. The cluster appears as a visual entity. The proposal is associated with a focal point being the junction of Donnybrewer Road and McLean Road. The site provides a suitable degree of enclosure and is enjoining other development. And the proposed site wouldn't adversely affect residential amenity, and the proposal meets the relevant requirements of Policy GDPOL 1. However, the proposal does fail to meet the requirements of Criteria 5, which requires that development must not create or add to a ribbon of development. And the site in this case is located at a junction and will be considered the 6th dwelling in a row along McLean Road and the 7th dwelling in a row along Donnybrewer Road, extending a ribbon of development along both roads. In addition to the criteria 1 to 7 of Policy How 22, the proposal must also be considered against the final provision of the policy, which states the planning permission will not be granted for a new dwelling within an existing cluster or focal point where it is located within a greenbelt, which is the case with this application, as the site is located within the greenbelt as set out in Map 1 of the Derry Area Plan 2011. Therefore, overall, the proposal fails to meet the requirements of Policy How 22. The proposal has also been considered against Policy How 23, which allows for a single dwelling in a small gap site and an existing substantially built up frontage in the countryside. A substantial built up frontage is considered a line of 5 or more dwellings which do not have accompanying development to the rear. As already covered under the consideration of How 22, officers consider the site proposed extends a ribbon of development along both the Donnybrewer Road and McLean Road. The site itself bookends the rows of development along these rows and cannot, as a result, be considered a gap site under the policy. Officers also consider that the site provides a visual break in the area which protects rural character. Policy How 23 also has restrictions in relation to granting of infill development within the Greenbelt and states that planning permission will not be granted for development of this type in a Greenbelt designation, which the proposal is located within. So overall, the proposal fails to meet the requirements of Policy How 23 as well. Officers would also consider the proposal against Policy How 24, which relates to personal domestic circumstances. This allows for the grant of planning permission for a dwelling in the countryside to meet the long-term needs of the applicant where there's a compelling site-specific need or reasons related to the applicant's personal domestic circumstances. This policy has 2 criteria which must be met. The first criteria requires that the applicant provides satisfactory evidence that a new dwelling is needed in respect to particular circumstances and genuine hardship will be caused if planning permission were refused. And the second criteria requires that the applicant demonstrate that there are no alternative solutions available to meet the particular circumstances, such as an extension or annex to the main dwelling, reuse of another building within the curtilage of the dwelling, or the use of a mobile home to meet a short-term need. A statement was submitted to support the proposal under House 24, which has been provided. Officers have considered the report and sought the agent to provide further information, which has been set out in the report before members. Having considered the information provided, officers visited the site and considered that the site has adequate space to accommodate an extension or annex to the existing dwelling at number 15 McLean Road to allow the applicant to remain on site to provide care. The site also has an existing garage which is capable of being incorporated into the main dwelling or converted. As a result, officers are of the opinion that on the basis of the information provided has not been demonstrated an alternative solution, or that alternative solutions are not feasible or viable to meet the needs of the applicant. The proposal therefore fails to meet the requirements of House 24 criteria B. Then in terms of policies CY1 and CY2, which relate to design, integration, and rural character, officers are content that the site proposed would meet the requirements of policy CY1. However, as already covered, the proposed site would add their ribbon of development, and it therefore fails to meet the requirements of policy CY2. In relation to transport, a new access has been proposed as part of the application, which DFI Roads have raised no objection with. The proposal therefore meets the requirements of policy TAM 2 and the relevant criteria, GD Pol 1. And then in terms of natural environment, the developments are considered against the requirements of policies NE1, NE2 and NE3, which relate to the natural environment. Officers consent that the proposal meets the requirement of these policies. So in summary, having considered the relevant policies and consultation responses, refusal is recommended with the refusal reasons set out in the report. And can I just draw members' attention just to the second refusal reason within the report? It's required a small amendment, which I've put onto this slide here, just in relation to the proposal being located within the Greenbelt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kieran. We have Alan Boyle online, the agent. Alan, can you hear us?
Is that on there? Is it on?
Alan, are you on mute?
Disappeared. I think he can hear us. Motionless. Gone offline.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hi, Alan.
Can you hear me yet? Hello? Sorry, give me 1 wee second here. I have two machines going. Hello?
Hi, Alan. Can you hear us?
Give me 1 wee moment. I'm getting feedback here. Sorry, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now, Alan. You have 5 minutes.
Sorry, if some technical difficulties, give me 1 wee second. Thank you. Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, Alan.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for committee for the opportunity to speak. This application was lodged in August 24, 12 months prior to LDP, and could have and should have been approved under that policy. We're now 2 years into the application, but we firmly believe it can be approved under HOU 22, 23 and 24. Our client has asked for a letter from his doctor, but he's an extremely private person and didn't want to do that until the very last. So we're awaiting that letter, and we should have that anytime soon. And if the committee is minded to wait that letter, we would respectfully ask for a site meeting as well. As we understand it, the planning department are applying regulation 32 of the LDP, and with regard to map settlement limits, zones and designations, specifically Greenbelt. We argue that the visual integration and policy CY1 would point out, and I think the planner has already said this, it is acceptable in the countryside if it does not spoil the character of the area. The site is on the extreme edge of a 25-year-old greenbelt policy. The site is bounded by new development, all of which has taken place since the original 2001 mapping. The site no longer reflects the reality that's on the ground, and the map no longer reflects the reality that's on the ground, and the development causes zero harm to openness. The site is less than 1 mile away from the Causeway Coast zoning, which enjoys the flexible rules of PPS 21 on countryside. So by and by, we're being adversely affected by an illusion caused by administrative boundaries. The council call for sites for the new local policies plan, the LPP, will make the 2001 plans obsolete. Enforcing an aggressive 25-year-old greenbelt restriction on this specific pocket fails to reflect the true environmental and spatial reality of the wider geographic area. There's a lack of harm. The physical reality is the site is in a cluster already surrounded by buildings, many of which were built since the 2001 plan. Therefore, we cannot cause urban sprawl or erode openness because it is already enclosed by existing development. There's an unfold paradox in this site. As an infill site does not extend the boundaries of a cluster into open countryside, it merely finishes the existing built-up layout. This neutralizes the greenbelt objection. The 2001 greenbelt is in de facto broken at this location because of the surrounding development and the new development, including a seasonal outdoor services business. The planning report accepts that the cluster exists and the focal points exist. The department is using an outdated transitional holding pattern to restrict development until they have their maps in place. The legal purpose of greenbelt, as per the SPPS, is strictly to prevent urban sprawl, stop towns merging, and preserve an openness. The planners accepted that this is an established cluster based around a focal point. So the purpose of the greenbelt shouldn't apply to this site. Building a house in a tightly bound existing cluster cannot cause urban sprawl or erode the openness. The land is already enclosed. Enforcing the 25-year-old zoning on a cluster infill site achieves absolutely nothing on the spatial protections of Greenbelt, which is meant to provide. The personal circumstances, we have provided personal circumstances, but not the doctor's letter. The doctor's letter can and will be provided if it's required. We have shown that there are genuine hardship and long-term care requirements due to the client's medical conditions, and that those conditions allow for an illegal override of the zoning. We challenge the weight of the 2001 Greenbelt Area Plan. It's a legacy artifact which was created over 25 years ago. The relevance has been severely damaged in the passage of time. The policy revisions and the physical changes to this landscape. It's fundamentally contradictory and unfair to judge the merits of this application under the modern LDP while evaluating its geography under a dead 2001 plan. The department has delayed the release of the final phase 2 LPP maps, and they are unfairly penalising the applicant using the transitional technicalities. Since the 2001 map, we had in 2006, we had PPS 21 by Lord Rooker, which caused a blanket greenbelt throughout the north. This caused uproar and sparked all kinds of legal battles and massive JRs because it would decimate rural communities. The dairies policy in the HOU 22 could be viewed as adopting Rooker's policy. Since that, we had in 2010, we had the PPS 21, which took precedent over the older maps, but it did not rewrite the area plans, meaning the council could always apply the 2020.
Sorry, excuse me, Mr. Boyle, your 5 minutes now concluded.
Can you give me a little bit more for the technical problems I'm about to wrap up in it?
That's fine.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, what I'm saying is the council, the PPS 21 never rewrote the maps from the 2001 Greenbelt zoning, but council always chose to ignore those maps, and that was the case after 2010, and it's still the case today. Council can choose to ignore those. The planners are essentially applying a rigid 2006 style direct rule blanket ban approach to a site that a modern localized policy says is perfectly sustainable. Thank you, Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. stay on where you are just to see if we have any members have
Thank you.
questions for you.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. And I'm gonna say it's the first time I've ever heard PPS 21 being described as flexible. But I know that we're on this committee, we battled with PPS 21 for quite some time. But my question is in relation to the personal information that you have alluded to in a doctor's letter. And because when I heard you say that, I was scratching my head and asking, why is this application in front of us today? Because we do need that information before we take a decision to see if it's relevant. And and I suppose the question is, have you informed officers that information is on its way and it's imminent? And if not, why not?
Sorry.
No, and I suppose that's just the frustration. And in terms of your commentary around the second phase of our LDP, I share your frustration. I think everybody involved in from a committee end, from a council officer end, we're extremely frustrated at the process and the lengthy process it takes to develop our own plan. And I appreciate that frustration extends to agents as well. But it's so I hear you, and I think you're preaching to the choir in that regard. But the personal circumstances one, I just feel that that once she said that, the alarm bells were ringing in my head straight away and going, why is this application in front of us, and why didn't you inform officers that it was on its way before now? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Jackson. What actually happened, we had informed the client that we should be providing it and we needed it. He's an extremely private man, and he was very afraid that his own personal circumstances would be in the public realm. We had told him on a number of occasions that's not the case. And it wasn't until the very last that after talking to his daughter, we said, look, if your daddy we need this letter. It is a very genuine case. This is family land. The Wards have lived there. The immediate Ward family have lived in this area for years, probably over 70 years. Jimmy's father lived there. His brothers lived nearby, and he just felt no, he didn't, and his own self, he would be afraid of putting a letter in, and that someone sees it or thinks he's playing on his frailties at the moment. And he said he didn't want to do it. And then when we realised we were up on committee, it was coming, we said, look, we need this letter. So he couldn't get an appointment with his doctor, and he rang me today and says, I'm getting the letter. I'm frustrated with him that we didn't get it before today. But he says, I will have this letter, but I'll not have it in time for the committee meeting.
Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Chair. Alan, just I know one of the things that was referred to in relation to how 24 was alternative solutions and whether those would be looked at and ruled out. So maybe could you explain a wee bit about what has been considered in relation to that?
Thanks, Councillor. I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually countered that argument with the planning department when we had given the evidence, and they came back to say we want you to give more evidence, and we give them more evidence. So I was surprised that they brought that up. Our client looked at extending to the house. The garage that's there is a small single size garage. The ground conditions in this area are poor. and requires piling for the foundations. The house adjacent to Mr. Ward's was recently rebuilt because his foundations gave way, and our client wouldn't want to, and professionally we advised them that extending onto the house wouldn't be a good idea. And his daughter has her own young family, so while she could give support to her father wants a degree of independence, but with his daughter close by. So we did look at all the different options that was there, and if we were extending to the rear of the existing property, we would be moving closer to mature trees, and if we were to extend to the upper side, we would be having to demolish a garage that's already there and costs for that. And if we were extending to the lower side, we would be on the site. So the obvious answer was a standalone dwelling for Nicola to live beside her father. Her father's name is Jimmy, and she was given the support, but Jimmy would still have the a degree of independence, but his daughter was close by to help.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Any further questions? Anyone online with a question? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. So we have a recommendation here from council officers to refuse the application. I'll put it over to elected members. Thank you. Councillor Devine, sorry, thank you.
Chair, thanks very much. Having read the application and listened to the presentation, I think in relation to how 22, so all of the criteria, Kieran's explained there, all of the criteria has been met except one, and that's urban development. And for me, looking at that site, I actually think that site is rounding off the site where it is. I appreciate that we're also tied by the Green Belt policy, and I totally agree. We're looking at a policy that's really outdated, 2011. But unfortunately, that's what we have in front of us to use. Every application, and we know this, is assessed on its own unique circumstances. And I think in this case, we should be given weight to the personal circumstances. I know living in a rural area, I've seen the benefits myself of having family members there just to provide that bit of extra support in a rural area. And I think particularly in a farming area where people want to try and remain independent. And that gives them a sense of purpose, I think, on a farm, and it improves their health and well-being. And I think we should be given additional weight to those personal circumstances. And Chair, I'm proposing that we set aside policy 22 and 23, and that we approve this application on how 24. On the personal circumstances. I do think we've talked about the doctor's letter, but I know we have some information there in confidential, and I'm content with the information that's provided in that in terms of the medical history. And if the doctor's letter comes in then to support that, then that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Have you got a seconder? Councillor Leonard? Thank you.
So, members, maybe just before we progress on this, I think obviously if the application meets one of the exceptions, whether it's How 22, How 23 or How 24, it can be approved. In this situation, the issue is How 24. From an officer perspective, the reason why this is and as a refusal under How 24 is the absence of the doctor's letter. Had that doctor letter been received, then it might well have been a matter which officers would have been content to progress with an alternative recommendation. Given that we're now advised that that doctor's letter is available, could I perhaps tentatively suggest, now I appreciate there is a proposal that's on the floor, but could I tentatively suggest that perhaps we defer this to allow that doctor's letter to come in? And if officers are content with the information that's contained within that letter, if members are content to delegate it back to officers solely if they are content with the information that's contained within those correspondence, we could deal with it by way of an approval on that basis rather than having to wait for it to come back in September again. If we feel that there is insufficient evidence in relation to that, well, we'll bring it back to members again then in September, and members can take a view with all of that information available, but they would have, in my view, at least all of the information available to them at that case in order to make the decision. So just a suggestion in relation to that.
Are members happy enough with? Are members happy enough with the deferral until September in lieu of the medical evidence?
Yeah, with the caveat that it's delegated to officers if the doctor's letter stacks up.
Solely if officers are minded to approve on the basis of the medical evidence, officers will not refuse the application if they're not content with the evidence. They will bring it back in September.
Can I have a proposal to defer then, please?
To propose, Chair.
Proposed and seconded, Councillor Devine, Councillor Leonard. Thank you.
So back to
yeah.
Oh, I don't have members are content. That's all right. Just let it stand. Get finished. Yeah. Two applications plus the papers. Short enough maybe and get back these bits back for something. Well, it's up to you, Chair, but just say get a just a second. I'll just find out in case there's something going on. Always nice to just
Members, Councillor Gallagher, do you want to come in there just before it says?
Not sure what you're going to say, but I was saying it's a couple of minutes to 6.
Yeah.
Hi, and I was sun splitting skies. It's hot and sticky. I maybe deferring the rest of the business to tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. We have 2 planning applications left. And then we have other stuff as well after. We'll not get it wrapped up today. So if we reconvene back here tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Okay, thank you.